so much for being here. Thanks, obviously, for staying so late. Obviously, you can tell this is very early. I have to push
Button up.
button up.
There you
Okay.
go.
Is that better? We appreciate so much the effort and energy you guys are putting into this. We actually thought this was tomorrow evening, so we were in the process of preparing for tomorrow, but and both of us had pretty early mornings. Mine started at 4:30 this morning, and my wife's started shortly thereafter. So, anyways, with that little prelude. We both live several blocks away. My name is Dr. Thomas Hine. I practice internal medicine and pediatrics at a couple of the hospitals in the area. I did that training in Massachusetts General Hospital, and then I also did an ultrasound fellowship at Massachusetts General Hospital.
And I'm Dr. Nancy Hernandez Hine. I am also actually currently in training for internal medicine and pediatrics.
Which means that she's a slave, being paid minimum wage and residency. So we know that this has been going on for a while, so we just wanted to give a few thoughts. It seems up to this point, most of the white coats have been OBGYNs who mainly focus on the pregnant woman, and obviously we're very concerned and interested about all patients. But as pediatricians, we're particularly interested in the little patient. So this is a neonatal stethoscope, the same stethoscope you'd use for on a premature 20-week-old, as a newborn, 40-week-old, as up until 1 or 2 months, you'd use this stethoscope. And we both use this not infrequently. So I think we bring a little slightly, perhaps different perspective. In particular, it seems like several speakers have sort of said, when does life begin? We don't know. Actually, maybe go back to your embryology textbook, guys. So Moore's embryology says pretty clearly that life begins when the egg and the sperm come together and they become a zygote with new DNA. It's the same DNA you'll have for the rest of your life. My wife will talk about some of the specifics of gestational stuff, but that's Moore's embryology textbook, like what we used, and that hasn't been refuted because it's the truth. So there's no sort of denying that. I would just like to give a couple of sort of thought-provoking things. I wasn't always quite so sort of pro-life as I am now. It was actually in medical school when I personally sort of participated in, without really knowing what was going on until it was being happened. So the D&E, the dilation and evacuation of a woman. And I mean, this actually was the fetus had already been demised at this point, but so it was roughly 13, 14 weeks. And oh my goodness, I mean, if there had been any doubt before in my mind, and there had been, because embryology is the course. I mean, to be totally honest, embryology is the one course in medical school that you have to do, but you just frankly, you fart your way through it. It's just a pass, fail. Nobody really cares. Because, these aren't really our patients, are they? Unless you go into maybe pathology or subspecialty thereof or maternal fetal medicine. I mean, it doesn't, come up very often. So honestly, I think most physicians, even though they're physicians and they say, here's my white coat, don't really, it's the neonatologists who honestly talk about it the most. So at this event there's no doubt it's all the things that prior people have spoken of. There's little fingers, there's little hands. I mean, it's clearly a human individual, and if it had continued to live, it would have been the same size, if not of me, of my wife. That was sort of a turning moment for me. A couple other things as friends of mine began to I had these discussions with friends who were going to become abortionists and so forth. I think two things were helpful to me. One is the so-called SLED argument. I haven't been here since 2 p.m. I'm sorry, but it's SLED. It's an acronym. So SLED. Basically, the argument is, and I think it's pretty compelling. What is the difference between a 6-week-old fetus, 20-week-old fetus, 38-week-old fetus, 20-week-old baby that's been born, and infant, adolescent, whatever. SLED, those are the four things. So size, clearly the size, the level of development, so how far are they in their brain being developed, the environment that they're in, and the dependence. So what are they sort of dependent on? Those four factors are the same, so a infant is smaller than an adult. That's size. Level of development, its brain waves haven't been. Any of you guys who have adolescent children know the brain doesn't fully develop until 24, and it's later in men, like 28 or so. And some men, they never really get there. So that's L. So the point is, the brain is always developing from the moment it sort of first has organogenesis around 4 weeks. Brain waves are detected around 6 weeks or so. And then environment. Okay, so what's environment? Well, clearly, the argument is, well, once it's inside of mom, it's sort of mom's body. It's clearly not mom's body. In fact, it can have its own blood type. We know that because if you have if you have discordant blood type with your partner, and you have either an abortion or a baby, you need to get ROGAM because they could have a different blood type, and so that could cause antibodies in your body. So it's clearly not your body. Like any physician should know that. It's not your body. It's different from your body. It's foreign from your body. Otherwise, how could it have a different blood type? Because that's from DNA. Anyway, so the environment issue is, okay, well, this is inside of mom, but what if it's inside of an incubator? Or what if it's inside of some other highly developed thing? What if we get to the point where we could put, there's talk of getting babies and putting them in gel and so forth. So honestly, again, environment is a mutable thing. These are all a spectrum. And finally, dependence. Go to the neonatal intensive care unit at Women and Infants, and you'll see that those babies are dependent on everything. You stop any of their pressure control, their respiratory control for 10 minutes, they're dead. Similarly, you stop you cut off the placenta, whatever, they're dead. So the SLED argument, again, size, level of development, environment, and dependence, is a spectrum of cross-human life. By the way, when you get older, it's sort of the reverse also. Your environment, your dependence, and so forth kind of reverses the other way, but we're not talking about euthanasia here. Although, frankly, I talked to, again, some of these really strident abortionist folks. They were friends of mine, and if you really push them, they're okay with infanticide too, because again, this is all spectrum if you really know what's going on. So I would encourage you to push some of these people and ask them, wait, so if the baby was 32 weeks and not doing so well or had some genetic defect or blah, 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 because I tell you, that's what's happening in Belgium and in the Netherlands and so forth. There's active euthanasia. It's one of the leading causes of death now in Belgium and the Netherlands. So do some research on that. And just while we're speaking of it, I know people have brought up, oh, well, they'll increase unsafe abortions and there's going to be more maternal deaths and so forth. Look at Poland as a recent example. In Poland, they actually, not too long ago, sort of reversed. One of the few countries in the world that reversed from having very pro sort of choice, letting women abort whenever, to being much more restrictive. And there's been no higher, incidence of back alley abortions or deaths thereof or so forth. So again, I think the data are important. It's problematic because Planned Parenthood's research arm is the Guttmacher Institute, who of course don't sort of advertise that, but obviously they have access to the data and other researchers don't. And when people try to go in there with cameras, it looks pretty awful, but then they kind of get maligned and thrown out. So frankly, just for us being here, we could get in trouble with our bosses because this is sort of not the popular view. I think, I wanted to give just one more little example, just as a thought experiment. So we're all aware of Pascal's Wager when talking about belief in God and so forth. And incidentally, I don't think any of this has to do with God or religion or what have you. It's very simply an issue of human rights. But anyways, Pascal's Wager can also be applied to the abortion thing. So the example that is given is, if there's a bunch of construction out and around here causing traffic, but if one of these construction, instead it was construction, let's say it was demolition. It was an old building that needed to be knocked down. So this is how this argument goes. So let's say the building needed to be knocked down, and then you're working for the demolition company, and your boss is right next to you, and your boss says, all right, hit the TNT, what I think it's called, lever. And you're about to do it, and then says, no, wait, there's a baby inside of there. Inside of that building, there's a baby in there. And you say, what? Are you sure? Oh, I'm sure there's a baby. And in fact, a lot of experts on baby knowledge agree with me. And in fact, the people who look for babies in buildings, I'm stretching a little bit, agree. Look, I did a whole fellowship in ultrasound. The way you acknowledge that there's a human life, we call it alive or, viable or whatever, is a heartbeat. A heartbeat you can detect very early on with an ultrasound. And it doesn't take, like any of you, I could teach you in literally an hour, and feel free, I can teach you later if you like, how to see the heartbeat. It goes, it's very small and very easy to see. Anyways, but let's say, going back to my argument, that you're saying, okay, wait, should I blow up this building or not? Because it's my job, and you know what? This is kind of inconvenient. We need to blow this down so we can make a new building. This is going to have lots of jobs and careers. And someone's saying, no, don't do it. There's a baby inside. And you say, wait, are you sure? Yeah, I'm sure. And then says, no, I'm sure there's not a baby inside. And then you take a vote, and the majority of Americans think there is a baby inside. But let's say it's 50-50, just for the sake of argument. There might be a baby inside. And then they say, wait, if you just wait for 8 months, then we'll be sure there's no baby inside. And then you can blow it up, that's fine, or it'll fall on its own or whatever, and then you can make a new building. Like, would anyone in this audience say, well, over half of people think there's a baby in there, but let's just blow it up? No, you'd be like, Pascals, wait, let's err on the side of caution. If we're not sure, and we're a Harvard-trained physician telling you that I'm pretty darn sure this is a human life, and I've seen these fetuses and I've seen the ultrasounds, and they're saying, no, it's not a human life, well, let's just err on the side of caution and say, well, it might be a human life, so maybe we shouldn't, kill it, because if it is, that's like murder, and that's pretty bad. So, in conclusion for my little bit, I just want to say that, look, not everyone in white coats has the sort of abortionist agenda. The difference is, probably Planned Parenthood gave them the day off, and we don't have the day off. And, the neonatologists and the pediatricians, a lot of them have kids and families. They're not able to come to these things and so forth. But I'm sure if you took a poll, many physicians are pro-life, like we are. And I know a handful, only having lived here for not all that long, having, getting married and so forth, who are here in the Providence area working at Brown. So, thank you.